All right, Dave, we are going to be doing our first ever waiver wire draft here for week 13. These are the rules. 2 teams, you and me. We're going to take turns making picks here. And obviously, it's just kind of like you're picking on the playground, right? For dodgeball. I was never last picked for dodgeball. I want you to know that, by the way. The way you're going to do these picks is just like the same kind of priority that you would have on waivers. Who is the guy that you want the most? The only rule that we have here is that the player must be available in at least 60% of ESPN leagues. So before we do that, there's a few guys here that didn't quite make the cut, but it's just important for us to tell all of our audience members here to check their waiver wires for these guys. And then, Dave, after I read these names, I want to hear which one you kind of like the best out of here. So Pat Freiermuth, tight end for the Steelers. He's available in 58% of leagues, just barely missed the cut. Ty Chandler, running back for the Minnesota Vikings. We're recording this on Monday morning, so we have not seen how Monday Night Football goes. And then Josh Downs, wide receiver for the Colts, who's available in 53% of leagues. So out of those 3 guys, who's the guy that you want to be targeting the most of these guys? Just missed the cut for us.
Very easily Pat Freiermuth. And he's a guy that we were talking about for the last few weeks. We've been saying, check your waiver wire. This guy got dropped when he hit IR, and he's dealt with a few injuries throughout the season. He had a hamstring, then he had a chest injury, and then another hamstring. Like, we drafted this guy to be a top 5, top 6, top 7 tight end. I believe his preseason ADP was at tight end 7. So, we had high hopes for this guy. He had a great rookie season last year. And then all of a sudden he's back. He's healthy. Matt Canada is gone. Tight end 1 on the week. So if Pat Freiermuth is available, you're going to have to probably dump the rest of your fab on him. I mean, you're not going to be able to lowball at this point in the season, but he is absolutely the type of guy where if you had a Mark Andrews, or if you drafted Kyle Pitts, who we talked about being kind of a big bust this year, who was funny enough getting drafted ahead of Pat Freiermuth, I think Freiermuth is the type of guy that you go out and you just dump everything you've got on him, because he is going to be a plug and play tight end for the rest of the season.
Speaking of firings, since we were doing that earlier on in the podcast, I mean, really, all they had to do was sacrifice Matt Canada to the football gods, and all of a sudden the Steelers are decent.
I mean, yeah, they put up 400 yards. I think, what was it, a 58 game stretch or something like that? But let's not get too excited here, all right? They scored 16
decent.
points.
I said decent.
I
didn't say they were good.
It's kind of funny, people in Pittsburgh are ready to charge the streets and throw a parade because they
Crown
scored
us
16 points. But they're gonna end up in the playoffs. That's for sure.
I'll say the difference is, though, it's the stuff that doesn't show up in the points, which is just Kenny Pickett was actually able to throw the ball around places. It wasn't just the outside of the field. It wasn't just on 2 or 3 different types of routes. It looked better. Pat Freiermuth being there was huge for them. And then Najee Harris, he lives, even though he's not the starter. He was
100 rushing yards.
God, man. All right, so those were the 3 guys that we're looking at that just missed the cut here. If they are available on your waiver wire, go and add them. Dave, it is officially time to start the Week 13 waiver wire draft. You get the first pick. We're going to go age before beauty here. So go ahead and make your first pick. I actually don't even know if you're older than me, but you can take the first pick anyways.
I think I got a few months on you, but this one's pretty obvious. When you said that we were kind of snaking back and forth and I got the first pick, I said, well, this is an easy one. Keaton Mitchell. I mean, we've talked about this guy since I think week 8 is when we first kind of put Keaton Mitchell on the map as somebody that we should pick up. Talked about it a lot this offseason, so I'm not going to bore you. He's fast. He was good in the offseason, good in the preseason, showed some flashes, got injured, and now it seems like he's starting to carve out a bigger and bigger role. And it seems like we played this game with Ravens running backs for years now. It's always oh, this guy's starting to heat up, and then Gus Edwards just kind of becomes the guy. But he saw a season high 46% of the snaps last night, which is pretty exciting. He out-carried Gus Edwards for the first time of the season, and he had just as many targets as the rest of the backfield combined. So he looked like the RB1 last night, and Gus Edwards isn't going to just disappear. He's still going to be around, but give me the young guy with the huge playmaking upside who is starting to see his role grow, as opposed to the aged veteran who's been around for a while and seeing his role slowly get diminished here. I just really like Keaton Mitchell. He's fast. He's elusive. He can catch the ball. He can get out in space. He can run between the tackles. He can kind of do it all. I don't know if he's going to completely take over this backfield, but with a bye next week, that's when we see things start to change. So don't be surprised if we come out in week 14 and Keaton Mitchell has himself a huge package.
You had to finish with that. I'm sorry, Joe.
I just wanted to catch you off guard there, Alfredo.
Man, you totally did. That was great. That was great. Applause to you. I would have gone with Keaton Mitchell as well if I had the first pick here. That snap rate continues to go up and up and up. As you said, huge package for Keaton Mitchell there on the Ravens,
He
and
just looks so much better than all the other running backs there. That's really what it comes down to. Like,
yeah, he looks better than everyone else in the backfield, and you just want good players on good teams, good offensive score points. Like that's it. I'm gonna go with my first pick here, and this does not make sense that he is still available everywhere. Jayden Reed, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers, available in 69% of leagues. Nice. I don't get this. Like, how do we do this week after week after week after week, where it seems like not only us, but every single fantasy football source out there is saying, go and grab Jayden Reed, go and grab Jayden Reed. And he's still available in nearly 70% of leagues. I'm actually a little bit annoyed by it because he's been so good. Since week 10, he's the wide receiver 15 in points per game, Dave. Like, we're talking about a guy who's nearly a top 12 wide receiver on this streak that he's currently on. I get it, since week 10. It's only been a few weeks here, but that's 3 weeks of football where the guy has been playing very, very well. He leads the team in target share. We're seeing a different sort of Jordan Love. He's kind of gotten back to what we were seeing at the beginning of the year, where he's throwing touchdowns, he's taking better care of the ball, and a lot of that has been because of Jayden Reed and his development. He's sort of become that Amon-Ra St. Brown for Jordan Love, a guy that he can just go to in really easy moments or in moments of stress. He always has that guy underneath, and that's kind of what I said initially when this guy got drafted by the Packers. That's why I really liked him a lot. And you start to see, Dave, Jordan Love trusts Jayden Reed so much. That play that was on the highlight reels over and over and over for the Thanksgiving game, where Jordan Love just threads the needle and gets that ball in between 3 Lions defenders, that's trust. It might also just be like a stupid decision and a bad ball, but it was beautiful. It was the way the play ended up. It was beautiful. It was trust.
In a window, he fit that into a mailbox. Like, he could not have been more than an inch off in any direction. Got to give credit where credit's due. That was one hell of a throw by Jordan Love.
I mean, it really was. It's a heck of a throw. He's got that trust in Jayden Reed, and don't look now, but there's also a little bit of kind of like this Deebo Samuel to Jayden Reed's game. Deebo and Jayden Reed are actually the only 2 players with at least 5 rush attempts over the last 3 games. So we're starting to see the Packers use him in different ways. He's scoring touchdowns on rushing plays. So I'm really excited to go out there and still see Jayden Reed on the waiver wire.
Yeah, I think the comp you made to Amon-Ra St. Brown, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's what I see is so much of Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think the one thing that you can kind of say, though, is that Jayden Reed is better at getting loose deep. That's something that we didn't really see in Amon-Ra's bag of tricks until this year 3 for him. Jayden Reed came out the jump. I mean, that's pretty much all he was doing early in the season was getting loose deep, and now he is starting to get better on these shorter routes and the intermediate routes. And like you said, getting touches out of the backfield, which is kind of the opposite of the developmental path that we saw for Amon-Ra St. Brown. But yeah, he looks great. You got to pick up Jayden Reed. He would have been my number 2. If you weren't taking Jayden Reed here, I would have. But I feel like after you get past those 2, things do thin out a little bit here. And I'm going to go with Tyjae
Not so
Spears.
fast. Not so fast. Don't turn off the podcast yet, guys. I promise you, there's still plenty of valuable players out there, Dave, just shooing people away.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that at all. But, there's a lot of different directions I could have gone here with this this 3rd pick in our waiver wire draft. Now with Tyjae Spears, especially after the last game that we saw, he got knocked out for some of the game, just got lit up in the open field. I don't know if you saw that play or not. But I think he might get dropped in some leagues because of that, because he had a down game and Derrick Henry found the end zone twice. And I think people are going to say, oh, Derrick Henry's heating up. But I don't know if I see it that way. When you look at the efficiency metrics, Tyjae Spears is the much better running back in just about every single facet. And I know we're comparing apples to oranges here. Tyjae Spears is a small guy. They get him out in space, and he's able to do a lot of things in the open field. Derrick Henry is smashing between tackles. But when you look, Tyjae Spears is leading the league in juke rate. He is juking a defender on 40.8% of his touches. Almost half of the time that he gets the ball in his hand, he is making a tackler miss with his speed and elusiveness. He's leading the league in breakaway run rate on 10.4% of his carries. He is ripping off 15 plus yards. I mean, he is just looking like a very, very good running back. 4th in the league in yards per created. I can keep going on and on with the efficiency metrics, but just trust me when I say that Tyjae Spears is crushing it from an efficiency standpoint right now. So right now, the opportunity might not be there. I think they're going to continue leaning on Derrick Henry the way they have in years past, but I'm looking at Tyjae Spears as an injury away running back, where if something happens to Derrick Henry, if Derrick Henry, God forbid, does go down, you're looking at Tyjae Spears as a league winner for the rest of the season.
You know what? I hate to be that guy that is always kind of patting themselves in the back and be like, I really liked this player before the season. And I really did. I loved Tyjae Spears when I watched the film, comped him to LaShawn McCoy and felt a little irresponsible doing that. But seeing how he's been playing and the way he's been so elusive and making tacklers miss and his versatility out of the backfield, this is a guy who I'm really happy to see that he's doing well. And Dave, like to kind of keep going on what you're saying here, I don't think we're going to see the Tennessee Titans in as many positive game scripts as they were this past week. So you're going to see a bit more of that passing usage for Tyjae Spears. I think the only thing that might have scared some people off was the injury stuff, the knee stuff at the beginning of the season, and none of that
has ACL. And I was going to say, like, you liked him. Everybody liked Tyjae Spears. The only reason he wasn't drafted in probably the late first, early second round was because he doesn't have an ACL. And even with no ACL and these injury concerns, the Titans still were willing to put a third round pick into him. So he's good. That's it. He's a really good football player.
Analysis. Just get good players.
I mean, I remember watching the preseason game against the Bears where he had this play, and it was like the first time I saw him get a touch in the preseason. He looked like he was shot out of a cannon, trucked through a defender, juked another defender after that. I just said, wow, any concerns we had about Tyjae Spears, we could probably put to rest now.
Yep. And so with the second pick here, this is fourth pick overall, my second pick.
Your second.
For Team Alfredo in the Week 13 waiver wire draft, I'm going to go with Joshua Palmer, wide receiver for the Los Angeles Chargers. He's available in 76% of leagues. And Dave, I know that Joshua Palmer is not a world beater, but this guy has kind of been the epitome of you don't know what you've got until it's gone. It's like being in a relationship where you just had a really reliable partner. And then when you break up and you think, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to find something better. And you date Quentin Johnston and you're like, nah. And then you go out on one date with Jalin Guyton and you're like, this didn't work out. So now you get to the point where you're out here going on Tinder dates with Alex Erickson, who was the second leading receiver in the Chargers game last night. We've gotten to the point where it's just Justin Herbert going out there with Keenan Allen. That's it. 14 receptions on 16 targets for Keenan Allen. The remaining 4 wide receivers had a combined 4 catches on 12 targets. This team absolutely needs another wide receiver to be out there. And I know someone might point out Quentin Johnston appeared to have gotten injured last night, missed most of the second half. Even when he's been healthy and he's been out there, we haven't seen anything. And I'm sure, these young guys, you can be patient, you can give them time to develop. But as of right now, it is not happening with Quentin Johnston. The Los Angeles Chargers, as we're seeing, they're not winning games. They're giving up points. They need to have another pass catcher out there. I'm ecstatic if I look onto my waiver wire and I see that Josh Palmer is still out there and 76%, we're talking about nearly 80% of leagues. Okay. And I know he still has one more week on IR, but this is the time to go get him before he comes back off IR and all the waiver wire articles have him there in the mentions where, you start to see that he's one of those players that's active again. This is the time to go and get a guy like Joshua Palmer.
Yeah, you want to try to be a week ahead. And that's kind of what we were saying with Pat Freiermuth weeks and weeks ago. Like, don't wait until he's activated and has his big game to pick him up. Pick him up now. Well, he's free and nobody else is thinking about him. So kind of the same mindset here with Josh Palmer and just kind of riffing off of your, going out and dating your Jalin Guytons and your Quentin Johnsons. That Stone Smart was pretty fun for a weekend, right?
It was. It was a fling. It was a nice little fall fling. That's what it was.
All right, I'll go with the fifth overall pick in our Week 13 waiver wire draft here. Tutu Atwell. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this, but he led the team in receiving yards, led the team in first downs. He was kind of the wide receiver 1 last week, which is crazy to say. I made the joke a few weeks ago, but Puka Nakua's Linsanity run might be coming to an end here. He's cooled down a little bit. I'm not ready to say that Cooper Kupp is dust yet, but 3 straight games with single-digit fantasy points seems like he is just getting injury after injury every single week. I mean, he came into the game questionable with the ankle injury. First catch of the game, he gets rolled up, immediately goes to the medical tent or I don't think he went to the tent, but he was getting worked on the sidelines. Just not looking good right now for Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp. So Tutu Atwell is worth a stash. I mean, early in the season, he was pulling 8-9 targets in almost every single game. But really what it comes down to is that Tutu Atwell has just really changed his style of game. If you look, it has been a tale of 3 seasons. Rookie year, Tutu Atwell couldn't get off of special teams. He didn't log a single snap, or he didn't yard a single stat offensively. And then year two, all he was doing is stretching the field. You know, he saw very low target share, very high ADOT. And this year we've seen his ADOT, his target depth, drop by 40%, and he has double the target share that he had last year. So he's developing into much more than the deep threat that we thought he was going to be. He's kind of being this guy who is winning all over the field. Now, I'm not making the comp to Tyler Lockett at all. That's just disrespectful to Tyler Lockett, but we see this a lot of times with these smaller guys. They come into the league, they are downfield burners, and that's kind of it. And then as they progress throughout their career, they develop into more well-rounded receivers. We're seeing that from Tutu Atwell. So right now, you know, this just comes down to somebody needing to step up in this Rams passing attack. They need something to change. It's not working right now with Cooper Kupp as the wide receiver one. So maybe Tutu Atwell is worth a stash, and maybe he can continue to put up some production like he did early in the year down the stretch here.
I just have to say, that same Los Angeles Rams team, is Kyren Williams the greatest football player that's ever played? Is that what we're at now?
I think you could say Kyren Williams playing against the Arizona Cardinals is the best running back you could have in
Got it.
fantasy. And, you know, I will say before his injury, that's the game that he got injured in was against the Cardinals. And I ate my words. I said Kyren Williams looked really, really good as a rusher. And then, you know, just the way it happens, he comes back again, gets to play against the Arizona Cardinals and absolutely gashes them for the second time. So we've seen him with kind of some up and down production based on the matchups. His schedule gets a little bit more difficult. Off the top of my head, I don't have it in front of me. I believe it's Cleveland and Baltimore over the next 2 weeks. But those game scripts could work where we still like Kyren Williams, where he maybe isn't rushing for 150 yards and getting 20 plus carries, but that's when he sees 8 targets, 10 targets, and makes up for it with a huge role in the passing game. So, yeah, Kyren Williams, eating my words from early in the season. I actually traded for him in a few leagues. And now that I've got Kyren Williams on my team, I think I like him a little bit more.
Now we love Kyren Williams. Good job, us. All right, with the 6th pick in the Week 13 waiver wire draft, I'm going to go with Jeff Wilson Jr., running back for the Miami Dolphins. He's available in 73% of leagues. And Dave, I think the biggest thing that I've noticed here with the Miami Dolphins is that the defense has done a complete 180. I know that unfortunately the Miami Dolphins looks like they just lost Jalin Phillips for the rest of the season. He's arguably the best player on the defense right now, but the defense as a whole has done a complete 180 where they are able to control the pace of games a bit more. Time of possession has gone way up, and we've been starting to see that Tua Tagovailoa hasn't been bad, but it hasn't been as spectacular as it was to start the season. The Dolphins aren't scoring in 3 plays like they were on every single drive earlier in the season. They're getting longer sustained drives. They're needing to use their running backs a bit more, and I know this is a little bit blasphemous here, but Jeff Wilson looked like the better running back for like 80% of that game on Black Friday against the Jets. There was quite a while there where I was sweating through some of those Raheem Mostert prop bets and seeing, you know, how he was going to do. But you look at Jeff Wilson, he had 73 total yards in the first 3 quarters of play. And then the team got ahead and just stopped running with him. And they decided like, hey, let's let Raheem Mostert go out there and finish this off. Let's get him going. That way we can see that both running backs are playing well. I know what you're thinking. The Dolphins might be getting Devon Achane back because he has come back from his stint on IR, but I think they're going to play it a little bit safer with Devon Achane over these next few weeks. The schedule gets really easy for them. You know, he can keep resting because they've got Washington Commanders, Tennessee Titans, and New York Jets over the next 3 games. And then the end of the season gets a lot more difficult with teams like the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills to close it out. And what the Dolphins really need is to have Devon Achane healthy for the postseason. So I do think that we will see a bigger dose of Jeff Wilson here over the next few weeks. And I mean, you also always have to be prepared for what if something happens to Raheem Mostert, a guy who's had injury concerns throughout his career. So that's why I'm going to go with Jeff Wilson here for my final pick.
Yeah, I love that pick. Still got Jeff Wilson stashed in a ton of leagues. Was one of my favorite targets in preseason best ball too. So haven't really seen it happen so far, but injuries kind of throughout the entire season. And like I said, he looked good last week and saw a much bigger workload than we've seen in any other game this season. So like that pick. I'll wrap it up here with another guy who probably doesn't have any standalone value right now, but Kenneth Gainwell is a guy that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, or no, just last week, actually, on our show with Daniel Harms when we were talking about playoff stashes. Talked about Kenneth Gainwell as kind of an elite stash. Now, DeAndre Swift has been healthy all year. That is not the norm for DeAndre Swift. He usually misses a handful of games every single year. If he does miss a game for whatever reason, Kenneth Gainwell is going to be a smash start. Waivers are thin this time of year. Let's call it like it is. This is the time of year where I want to try to start stashing up as many injury away running backs as I can. And Kenneth Gainwell is a good running back on the team that has the best rushing output of any team in the NFL. So that's really what it comes down to for me. You're not putting Kenneth Gainwell anywhere near your starting lineups right now. But if something happens to DeAndre Swift, just like you said with Jeff Wilson, just like I talked about with Tyjae Spears, Keaton Mitchell also has that, injury away upside. But Kenneth Gainwell has immense upside if Swift is to miss any time.
And the Eagles are playing just such good football at the moment. We keep going back to the same principle. Get good players that are on good offenses. I feel like that's just kind of the thing you have to look at, especially with some of these guys, like you said, Dave, that they're just an injury away. We kind of want to know, what does that mean once they finally get on the field? And it could be really, really good for Kenneth Gainwell.
Remember the preseason reports, just going off on a riff here. Remember when we heard in the preseason after they had traded for DeAndre Swift, when they said Kenneth Gainwell is going to be our featured back. He is going to get all of the touches. Whatever happened to that? I mean, was DeAndre Swift it was week 2. Kenneth Gainwell got hurt and DeAndre Swift got the workload, and they just said, well, genie's out of the bag, cat's out of the bottle. We got to keep just going with DeAndre Swift here. That's kind of what happened. But Kenneth Gainwell has the skill to be a 3-down back if the opportunity arises.
Is that where you keep your genie in a bag?
Yes, and my cat in a bottle. Yes.
Poor cat. Okay, I know I accidentally said on my last pick that would be the final pick. It's not. I'm stupid, and this has been a rough morning for us. But with the final pick of the Week 13 waiver wire draft, I'm going to go with Jalin Hyatt, wide receiver for the New York Giants. He's available in 98% of leagues. And listen, this could be a big time boom bust type pick. And that's the type of prospect he was coming out of Tennessee. And I'll be honest, I wasn't really that into Jalin Hyatt coming out of Tennessee. He ran like 2 or 3 routes. He was in kind of a Mickey Mouse type offense over there in Tennessee. It's not something that we typically see have a lot of success in the NFL. But Brian Daboll and the Giants offense did a good job this past week of setting up Jalin Hyatt to be in successful situations. And don't look now, but Tommy DeVito's actually playing the Giants out of the quarterback sweepstakes, and they might not have a top 3 or 4 pick in the NFL draft this year. And it looks like there's some sort of chemistry between Tommy DeVito and Jalin Hyatt. You look at week 12 and Hyatt led the team in targets. He had the second most routes run on the team. And this is just simply looking at a guy who's going to give you excitement and explosive plays. And that's where the Giants are right now. They need some excitement. They need to try to generate some sort of team culture that gives fans and players excitement going into next season. And right now, especially when you're not making the playoffs and you're down to your 3rd quarterback, this is where teams start to evaluate the young guys and see what can they do with these players going forward. So I do expect Jalin Hyatt to get a lot more playing time. I will say this, though. The only caveat about the production we saw from Jalin Hyatt this week is that we haven't really seen it throughout the rest of the year. And this was against the New England Patriots secondary, who's been the 2nd worst defense against wide receivers over the last 6 weeks in fantasy football. So we might not have really seen the true Jalin Hyatt or the true Giants offense. I mean, they scored 10 points. Like that's not anything to write home about. It's the exact opposite of what we've been preaching. Get good players and good offenses. We're getting a kind of skeptical player on a somewhat suspect offense here, but over the next few weeks, they've got the Packers, Saints, Eagles, and Rams. The Giants should be underdogs in all those games. We should still see plenty of passing and the ball going towards Jalin Hyatt.
Yeah, I mean, Jalin Hyatt, like you said, I think he summed it up. Boom bust player. Not somebody that you're going to feel great about plugging in your lineup right now, but we do see these rookies warm up as the season goes on. Hyatt has shown some flashes here, and Tommy DeVito hasn't really sunk the ship the way that a lot of Giants fans thought he would. He is somehow keeping this team afloat. So yeah, I think Jalin Hyatt makes for a fine stash. Got some guys that just missed the cut too, right? I mean, it's like we said, it's kind of thin this time of year. But I think there's still some other guys that are worth checking out in the waiver wire as well.
Yeah, some of the guys that missed the cut here, Dave. Demario Douglas, who, I mean, he probably should be rostered. I think you could make an argument that he could have been one of the guys that we drafted here. He's still available in 69% of leagues. I think the concern there is just how bad that Patriots offense is. And really, it's just Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones, and you just don't know.
we've been saying the same thing about Pop Douglas for weeks. Like, really good
Yeah.
player, the targets are there, but it's the Patriots.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to.
And there's a few other wide receivers. Curtis Samuel, who's now looking healthy, and the Commanders passed the ball a ton. Noah Brown, who kind of remains the Josh Palmer of the Houston Texans, if anything were to happen to any of these top two wide receivers, Tank Dell or Nico Collins, hopefully not, right? And then Jameson Williams, whose snap share just keeps going up and up and up and up each
I,
week for the
I gotta
Lions.
say, I'm shocked you didn't take Jameson Williams when we were doing this
I'm
draft.
shocked
You
too.
went with Jalin Hyatt over Jameson Williams. You're a changed man, Alfredo. I did not expect to not talk about Jameson Williams at depth on today's show.
Yeah, that's called growth, kids. Read a book. And the other guy, Greg Dortch, man, the human Dortch. He's still available in 99% of leagues, and he's kind of just extinguishing all of the Marquise Brown love that we had. I know Hollywood Brown was fine this week, but Greg Dortch has become a real target for Kyler Murray. And last guy, Dave,
Especially
we
with
talked about.
Michael Wilson out. Michael Wilson was
Yeah,
out last week, so that makes a big difference. I think what our takeaway is that if Michael Wilson isn't playing, you can fire Greg Dortch up as kind of a boom bust wide receiver 3, which I don't think a lot of people really thought much about that this offseason.
well, and we want to get to some of these deeper players, right? Because like there's always the comment of all these players are rostered in my league. What are you playing, a 6-man league? Well, here you go. Here's a player who's available in 99% of leagues. And then Dave, last guy to take a look at here, Royce Freeman, running back for the Rams. We talked about Kyron Williams, and there was a bit more of a split that we saw here. I know some of that has to do with the Rams getting ahead early, but Royce Freeman was still getting a good bit of the touches early in the game as well.
Yeah, and I mean, Kyron Williams is obviously the workhorse, but I think this is probably better for him. Like, one of the concerns we had is that he had literally a 100% snap share. He did not come off the field for one of the games early in the season, and you don't want to see that for a running back. Like, that is a position that takes a beating. And Kyron Williams, one of the red flags when he was coming into the league was that he was undersized and that he wouldn't be able to hold up to that workload. And Sean McVay just scoffed at that and put him out there for 95, 100% of the snaps every week. And then sure enough, he got injured. So I think that this is actually better for Kyron Williams. He played a 61% snap share, which was a season low, but he also had his best outing of the season. So I think it kind of works better when they could have a little bit of a committee and they aren't grinding Kyron Williams, down to the bone like they did early in the season. But that does open up an opportunity for Royce Freeman, who found the end zone and was involved somewhat, really deep stash there. But I think the other thing is that if Kyron Williams gets hurt again, we already kind of saw the passing of the torch where Royce Freeman was getting more touches as Darrell Henderson was somewhat getting phased out. So I think Royce Freeman is kind of the handcuff to this backfield.
Well, we're going to be back again tomorrow with our Tuesday takeaways. We're going to review all the games that happened throughout Thanksgiving and Black Friday and Sunday and Monday Night Football and give you all of our thoughts and takeaways from Week 12. Until then, we'll see you next time. Adios.